Little did Harry Potter realize that things were going to be so much worse than before. Not only did he openly question the sorting situation at Hogwarts, but he also made a few enemies, mainly Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, when he refused to apologize to them for choosing to be in Ravenclaw instead of joining them in Gryffindor. Most of the other students agreed that Harry belonged in Ravenclaw, yet the Gryffindors remained unconvinced. They viewed Harry's decision as a betrayal, a sign that he didn't value the Gryffindor traits of courage, chivalry, and loyalty. This simmering resentment threatened to cast a shadow over Harry's Hogwarts experience. He wasn't just a student anymore, he was a representative of his house, and his choice had created a rift between him and his would-be friends. "Harry, don't listen to those guys. They're just a bunch of stupid jerks who don't know the meaning of a proper British education," Candace said as she, Harry, Philip, Duncan, and Eleanor were walking towards the Great Hall, where the meeting with Professor McGonagall was scheduled. Her voice, usually bubbly and enthusiastic, was laced with concern. Harry, still smarting from his earlier confrontation with Ron and Hermione, appreciated Candace's loyalty. "It's not that big of a deal," he mumbled, trying to sound unconcerned. "They're just sore losers." Duncan, ever the pragmatist, chimed in, "Maybe so, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't take it seriously. Gryffindors can be prideful, especially when it comes to them winning the House Cup." Eleanor added, "Duncan's right, Harry. Professor McGonagall will likely want to mediate things. Remember, you don't have to apologize for the Sorting Hat's choice." Philip nudged Harry's shoulder reassuringly. "We've got your back," he said simply. With renewed determination and a surge of gratitude for his Ravenclaw friends, Harry squared his shoulders and faced the looming oak doors of the Great Hall. Whatever awaited him inside, he wouldn't face it alone. At the same time, Ron Weasley, Hermione Granger, Victoria Walsh, Austin Underhill, and Josephine Hunter found themselves facing a different kind of ordeal. Professor Snape, his usual sneer ever present, had them diligently cleaning encrusted cauldrons and phials as punishment for their earlier transgression. The atmosphere in the potions classroom was thick with the stench of burnt ingredients and unspoken resentment. Across the room, separated by a long, scarred workbench, sat Patrick Harvey. Unlike his Gryffindor peers, Patrick wasn't there for punishment. He was receiving extra help from Professor Snape, alongside a sheepish-looking Neville Longbottom. Their hushed whispers and the clinking of vials served as a stark contrast to the Gryffindor's fuming silence. Patrick, catching sight of the fuming Gryffindor group, couldn't resist a gloating remark. "I knew you lot were up to no good," he said in a scathing whisper that carried across the tense silence, "and now you've gone and practically made Harry Potter a traitor to Gryffindor. I warned you, Granger, Weasley, things wouldn't end well with your bullying tactics." His words hung heavy in the air, a microcosm of the growing animosity between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw. Even in detention, the brewing conflict between the houses was impossible to escape. It was a clear sign that Hogwarts, once a place of wonder for Harry Potter and Patrick Harvey, was quickly becoming a battleground of house rivalries. Snape's voice, dripping with sarcasm, echoed through the dungeon classroom. "I see you've managed to turn Harry Potter, a Ravenclaw student, into an enemy of Gryffindor. A most unwise turn of events, given the precarious state of inter-house unity." The Gryffindors shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. Snape's words held more than their usual caustic bite. A hint of something else flickered in his dark eyes, amusement, perhaps, or even a veiled threat. The Gryffindors exchanged uneasy glances. Their impulsive behavior hadn't just fractured their potential friendship with Harry, it had potentially jeopardized the fragile peace between the houses. The weight of their actions settled in their stomachs, a cold realization that their rivalry with Ravenclaw might have just escalated into something far more serious. Snape's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Clearly, none of you were paying terribly close attention when Potter spouted off about house rivalries being pointless distractions." How very Gryffindor of you all, to prioritize pointless animosity over basic courtesy. The Gryffindors bristled at his words, but none dared to contradict him. Snape's sharp tongue was one thing, but his subtle praise of Harry, a Ravenclaw, was a far more unsettling development. Detention was shaping up to be more than just scrubbing cauldrons. It was a lesson in humiliation, served with a sneer, and a chilling reminder of the consequences of their actions. The weight of Snape's words hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the clinking of vials and the murmur of Professor Snape's quiet instructions to Neville. The Gryffindors stole glances at each other, the camaraderie they once shared replaced by a cold sense of isolation. Their impulsive behavior had not only fractured any potential friendship with Harry, but it had also potentially jeopardized the fragile peace between the houses. In that moment, they understood the truth behind Harry's words. House rivalries were not harmless games, but petty squabbles that could have serious repercussions. Detention wasn't just about punishment. It was a harsh lesson about the importance of unity and respect, delivered by a bitter potions master with a surprising dose of veiled sympathy for the ostracized boy who lived. Entering the Great Hall with his friends, Harry was met with a vibrant tapestry of Hogwarts students. Hufflepuffs, Ravenclaws, and Slytherins filled their respective tables, their animated chatter weaving a warm buzz throughout the air. A sense of belonging washed over Harry, a stark contrast to the cold dread that had settled in his stomach moments before. His gaze drifted towards the Gryffindor table, and a wave of disappointment crashed over him. A meager 30 students occupied the once bustling house table, a mere shadow of the overflowing camaraderie that usually emanated from it. The sight was a chilling reminder of the brewing animosity between him and the Gryffindors. The meager turnout at the Gryffindor table foreshadowed a tense gathering, and a cold dread settled in Harry's stomach. The repercussions of the Sorting Hat's decision, it seemed, were just beginning to unfold. The once warm embrace of Hogwarts, a place he'd envisioned as a magical haven, now felt laced with undercurrents of tension and a looming sense of isolation. As he scanned the sea of unfamiliar faces around him, a flicker of doubt ignited within him. Had he chosen the right house after all? As he looked closer, he spotted a few friendly faces from Ravenclaw returning his gaze with warm smiles, a silent reassurance that he wasn't entirely alone. With a deep breath, Harry squared his shoulders and proceeded towards the Ravenclaw table, the decision to embrace his new house solidifying with each step. Despite the meager turnout, a few familiar faces offered Harry a glimmer of solace amidst the Gryffindors. He spotted Stacy Snape, Potions Master Snape's son, likely there due to his father's position of authority. Stacy's cousins Julia Black and Jaden Rose, along with Agnes Parker, and her friends Abigail Beaufort, Julian Olsen, and Harley Parkinton, were also present. Their attendance, while a relief, did little to dispel the tense atmosphere that hung heavy in the air. However, Harry's attention was snagged by an unexpected sight. Chauncey Barlow, a boy ostracized by Gryffindor despite the Sorting Hat placing him there, sat confidently amongst the Slytherins. The sight of Chauncey, a known outcast, seemingly being accepted by his new house sent a jolt through Harry. It was a stark reminder of the consequences of the Gryffindors' actions. Their intolerance had not only fractured any friendship with Harry, but also driven a student away from their own house. More importantly, Chauncey's presence among the Slytherins was the very reason for the meeting. Slytherin, a house known for valuing ambition and cunning, wasn't typically known for its tolerance of outcasts. Chauncey's acceptance there underscored a disturbing truth: inter-house tensions had escalated beyond petty rivalry, threatening the fragile peace that had existed between the houses. The once welcoming atmosphere of Hogwarts now felt laced with undercurrents of animosity, and Harry couldn't help but wonder if he'd made the right choice in choosing Ravenclaw. Recognizing the turmoil in Harry's eyes, Stacy offered a reassuring smile. "Honestly, Harry," he said, leaning in conspiratorially, "you dodged a bullet ending up in Ravenclaw. Gryffindor's a shipwreck right now. They're all at each other's throats over your sorting, and Snape isn't exactly thrilled with them either. His words were met with nods of agreement from the other scattered Gryffindors. A wave of relief washed over Harry. Maybe, just maybe, Ravenclaw wasn't such a bad place to be after all. The warmth emanating from his fellow Ravenclaws across the hall, their quiet hum of conversation a stark contrast to the Gryffindors' tense silence, solidified this feeling. He stole a glance at Chauncey, now seemingly at ease amongst the Slytherins. The sight served as a stark reminder of the consequences of blind prejudice. In that moment, Harry knew he belonged in Ravenclaw, a house that valued wit and acceptance, where he wouldn't be ostracized for the Sorting Hat's choice. As he straightened his robes and met Stacy's kind gaze, a flicker of determination ignited within him. He would navigate this new chapter at Hogwarts, forge new friendships, and prove that courage and loyalty could exist outside the confines of Gryffindor. Before Harry could respond, a hush fell over the Great Hall as Professor Dumbledore, his beard as white as ever, strode into the room. The weight of his presence was undeniable. Every student, regardless of house rivalry, sat a little straighter in their chairs. Anticipation crackled in the air, thick enough to taste. Everyone awaited the headmaster's words, curious to know how he would address the elephant in the room, the growing tension between Gryffindor and the other houses, particularly in light of Harry's controversial placement in Ravenclaw. Dumbledore's voice, laced with his usual warmth, echoed through the great hall. "I trust everyone is aware," he began, a twinkle in his eye, "that a certain sorting has caused a bit of a stir lately. It seems a healthy dose of competition between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw has blossomed into something more." He paused, letting the weight of his words hang heavy in the air, something more akin to a tempest in a teapot, wouldn't you agree? A ripple of suppressed laughter ran through the hall, easing the tension a fraction. "However," he continued, his tone turning serious, "rivalries can be a source of growth, pushing us to excel in our studies and Quidditch. Remember, a little competition between houses never hurt anyone." But, he fixed his gaze upon the students, his voice firm yet kind, "Fierce competition must not overshadow the importance of unity. Hogwarts thrives on the strength of its houses working together, not their divisions. We are all members of the same school, united by a common magical heritage." His gaze swept over the student body, lingering on the empty Gryffindor seats, and the solitary figure of Chauncey amidst the Slytherins. It was a silent reminder of the potential consequences of unchecked animosity. The message was clear: disunity weakened not just the houses but Hogwarts itself. Dumbledore's words hung heavy in the air, a call for unity that resonated with Harry on a deep level. He stole a glance at his table, where his housemates were watching him with a mixture of curiosity and support. Taking a deep breath, he rose to his feet, all eyes turning towards him. "Professor Dumbledore," he began, his voice surprisingly steady, "with all due respect, if house unity is so important, why did the Sorting Hat place me in Ravenclaw? Throughout the selection process, it seemed to be leaning towards Gryffindor. Wouldn't it have made more sense to keep me there, for the sake of their happiness?" A murmur rippled through the hall. Harry's question was bold, echoing the unspoken confusion of many students. Dumbledore's twinkling gaze met Harry's, and a hint of a smile played on his lips. This was the moment Harry had been waiting for, a chance to understand the Sorting Hat's enigmatic decision, and perhaps dealing with the Gryffindors in an effective way. Dumbledore's eyes, twinkling like facets of the night sky, met Harry's. "Ah, Harry," he said, his voice a gentle rumble, "you see, the Sorting Hat takes many things into account when placing a student. Your bravery, your inherent Gryffindor traits, were no secret. In fact, they were quite evident. However," he paused, letting the weight of his words settle, "the Sorting Hat also considers a student's desires. And your will, your very strong will, Harry, played a significant role in the decision." A murmur of surprise rippled through the hall. The idea that a student's choice could influence the Hat's decision was not common knowledge. Harry himself felt a surge of astonishment. Dumbledore continued, his voice turning firmer, the question, Harry, is not why you weren't placed in Gryffindor, but why you, so demonstrably brave, felt a stronger pull towards Ravenclaw. A frown creased Harry's brow. He recalled the countless hours spent devouring charms books, and the thrill of unraveling the mysteries behind spells. It wasn't just bravery that had always driven him, it was a fervent curiosity, a yearning to understand the world around him through a logical lens. Perhaps, he mused, that insatiable thirst for knowledge was what had tipped the Sorting Hat's decision in Ravenclaw's favor. He looked at Dumbledore, a flicker of understanding replacing his initial confusion. There's always a third choice. A murmur of surprise rippled through the hall at Harry's unexpected statement. Dumbledore's brow rose slightly, a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. An interesting perspective, Harry, he said, his voice mild. Tell me more about this third choice you speak of. Taking a deep breath, Harry continued, before the Sorting Hat even touched my head, I was faced with a choice: Gryffindor or Slytherin. It seemed like those were the only options. But then I realized that there must be another way. A path that wasn't defined by courage or ambition alone. That's when I felt a pull towards Ravenclaw, the house that valued knowledge and wit. It felt like the place where I could learn and grow the most, not just as a wizard, but as a person. His voice rang out clearly, challenging the traditional notions of house rivalry. Even the most hardened Slytherins shifted in their seats, a hint of respect flickering in their gazes. Harry may not have chosen their house, but his words resonated with the truth that there was more to a witch or wizard than just their house colors. Harry pressed on, his voice gaining momentum. But as I went about my term here, he continued, his gaze sweeping across the tense hall, I began to notice how everyone seemed to see the Slytherins as the evil house and the Gryffindors as the good house. It felt simplistic. Surely, there's more to a person than their house colors, right? A murmur of agreement rippled through the hall, particularly from the Slytherin table. Even Draco Malfoy, usually sporting a sneer, looked thoughtful. Harry wasn't advocating for Slytherin, but his words challenged the deeply ingrained prejudices within Hogwarts. We all have the potential for good and bad, Harry declared, his voice ringing with conviction. Just because someone's in Slytherin doesn't mean they're destined to be a Death Eater, and Gryffindors aren't the only ones who can be brave. He stole a glance at the empty Gryffindor seats, a silent plea for understanding. Maybe, he concluded, his voice softer now, if we focused less on rivalry and more on what unites us: magic, friendship, the chance to learn and grow together, Hogwarts would be a stronger, more cohesive place. Silence descended upon the hall, heavy with the weight of Harry's words. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with pride as he surveyed the students, their faces a mixture of contemplation and newfound respect. Perhaps, just perhaps, Harry's bravery wasn't limited to facing dark wizards. It had taken courage to stand before his peers and challenge their deepest assumptions about themselves and each other. The question now hung in the air: would they heed his message and usher in a new era of unity at Hogwarts? As Harry's voice echoed through the Great Hall, challenging age-old prejudices, a different scene unfolded in the dimly lit potions classroom. Ron, Hermione, Victoria, Austin, and Josephine trudged through the dregs of their detention, their faces etched with a mixture of exhaustion and resentment. The once vibrant Gryffindor camaraderie had been replaced by a tense silence, punctuated only by the clinking of vials as they scrubbed encrusted cauldrons. Meanwhile, Patrick and Neville emerged from Snape's private storeroom, their expressions contrasting sharply. Neville, usually a portrait of nervous fluster, beamed with newfound confidence. The potions lesson had clicked for him this time, thanks to Snape's surprisingly patient tutelage. A subtle sense of pride flickered in the usually dour professor's eyes. Neville's genuine curiosity and willingness to learn Snape grudgingly admitted to himself, were far more valuable than Patrick's anger-filled posturing. Across the room, Patrick, oblivious to Snape's internal musings, swaggered out with a self-satisfied smirk. He'd finally managed to concoct a passable forgetfulness potion, albeit with a slight and concerning shade of purple. Snape, his lips pursed in disapproval, made a scathing remark about Patrick's shoddy technique, shattering the boy's fleeting moment of triumph. Patrick, accustomed to praise and preferential treatment from the Gryffindor teachers, bristled under Snape's criticism. The once eager student, motivated by a desire to impress the professor more than a love of learning, began to sulk. The atmosphere in the potions classroom mirrored the tension brewing in the Great Hall. On one hand, there was a glimmer of hope, Neville's newfound confidence, a testament to the power of genuine instruction. On the other hand, Patrick's unhappiness, fueled by a skewed sense of betrayal, served as a reminder of the deep-rooted prejudices that Harry was trying to dismantle. As the students filed out of the classroom, the weight of Harry's words hung heavy in the air. Would Hogwarts heed his message of unity, or would the houses remain entrenched in their rivalry? Only time would tell.